What is up, wisdom seekers? I'm Richie,
I'm Savannah.
and this is the Pitch and Toss Podcast where spreading wisdom is what we do.
We're just two ordinary people trying to unpack different ways on how to make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, my name is Richie. I am a U.S. Army veteran, and I have done a ton of different things career-wise, but I've noticed that wisdom and the seeking of wisdom has played a huge part in my life. So I've wanted to share that with the world, and maybe I can make somebody's life a little better for it. So that's why I'm doing this and why I'm really excited to get this started.
And I'm Savannah. Obviously, we're parents of three kids. And
Forgot about that part.
and we've been spending the majority of the past 5 years really just focusing on our children. But both of us have such a heart to try to, one, learn ourselves, and then also, two, to just be able to spread wisdom and knowledge to others around us as well. In addition to that, I'm also a nurse practitioner. And just through that in primary care, you just see depression running rampant. So it's just how can we really make this world better?
Yeah,
There has to be a better way.
has to be a better way. So, getting started, I guess, what would you say that your definition of wisdom in your own words is?
That's a good question. Maybe I would just describe it as the study of like from other wise people and incorporating it into your life in a way. Like,
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I feel like it is a really hard word to kind of define. Um, but I would say a definition of wisdom is using experiences to make yours and other people's lives better, maybe. Um, I'm not sure. So we did pull the actual definition, right? Merriam-Webster said, wisdom is the ability to discern inner qualities and relationships, or insight. So wisdom and insight are the same thing. But I also really liked what Wikipedia actually had to say. Wisdom, also known as sapience and sagacity, is the act of using one's depth and breadth of knowledge and experience to do good by oneself and others. Wisdom is the interpreting and understanding of knowledge that leads to greater insight, which I think is pretty cool, right? So I'm pretty upset that Wikipedia wasn't considered a good resource whenever we were in high school. We weren't allowed to use Wikipedia for writing papers, but I feel like that's pretty spot on. Um, so given that, like what, I guess, sources of wisdom, what are some good sources of wisdom that you take, whether that's reading from your life, from other people's lives?
yeah. If you're asking me specifically, obviously, like there's biblical wisdom, and I think that overarching, no matter who you are, like there's so much truth that's found in that. For me personally, like where I kind of draw a lot of my knowledge and experience of, I think just as a woman, like we very much love relationship, and I want others in life. I call on them for advice and wisdom, I guess, in a way, if there's someone that I kind of aspire to be what they are, if that makes sense.
Okay. So you look at qualities in people that you like, and then you kind of see how they built that quality almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No,
So
that's
people I'm quite close to
that's good.
or aspire to be.
I like that.
What about
Uh,
you?
so reading is a big one. I have this whole thing, right? And this is open for discussion, so please let me know if I'm wrong. I don't believe there's any such thing as new wisdom, right? So I think there's new knowledge and new ways to apply wisdom, but I don't think wisdom in and of itself is new. And maybe I'm just defining it as these core truths or something. But even if something's not written as wisdom, if someone wrote something that was wise and novel, to be articulated today, I still think that's not necessarily new wisdom, because then even if it's written today, I bet you that same piece of wisdom would also apply if you used it 20, 50, 100,000 years ago. So I think wisdom is kind of like the core of everything. So whenever you say wisdom, it is kind of these foundational truths, if that makes sense. And maybe I'm not articulating this very well, but I don't know. I think it's really cool that I can read something in, a new book and then find that same principle in, you know, biblical texts or business books, or right, some of the oldest writings we have, like the Epic of Gilgamesh or whatever. Those same threads are there, which is super cool. Um, so yes, I would say I'm gonna pull something up real quick, but some of the oldest texts that we've ever read, or were able to decipher, actually include a lot of wisdom. Hold on a second. I would say most people would agree that humility is something that's great. Um, it's biblical. Humility is biblical. It's in all this other text. Putting yourself on a pedestal is a recipe for people not liking you, or whatever. It's just not wise to place yourself on such a pedestal that other people will want to take you down if you're heighten yourself. That same principle is actually present in the instructions of, I'm going to butcher this, but Shurupak, which is one of the oldest writings we've ever deciphered, ever, in as early as 2600 BC, right? So 2,000 years before the birth of Christ. So that, I don't know, that I feel like that's really cool. That same thread, that advice that was given 4,000, 5,000 years ago, is just as relevant today as it was back then. One of the first things we ever wrote as a society. And the fact that sapience is another word for wisdom, and that we're Homo sapiens, those two words are of the same root. So we literally named ourselves people of wisdom, right? And I think so. I think it's kind of foundationally ground into our core that wisdom is super important.
When you say that that's ground into our core, though, like what does that look like? Because I just feel like we constantly, as human beings, aren't necessarily wise in just our general.
Yes. No, I would agree with that. And it's a good point. I think just because we don't act on it doesn't mean it's not within us. And when you see people that are successful, I'm not saying they are always wise, but I'm saying there's always some core of knowledge or wisdom, understanding that they have to even get there, if that makes sense. Who do we look up to the most? The people that are the most wise. And I don't think it necessarily has to do anything with status or success or anything, but we like, whether we want to follow it or not, when we see people acting wisely, then they were like, man, I wish I had that type of self control or whatever, even if we don't necessarily say it out loud. So I just feel like it's that foundational piece. I don't know if that makes sense.
So what does that look like just in day-to-day life?
Day-to-day life,
Like, well, wisdom.
right? So one of the definitions we gave earlier for wisdom was applying experience, right? So even in your job, there's people that have been there longer than you, have done things. They are wiser, at least in the things of your job. I hope, right? I know there's some terrible bosses and coworkers out there, but in general, I would say they're wise in that. So that's why you rely on them to do that.
But you're being wise to be able to rely on
You're
them.
being wise
So
to.
the opposite would be you see a person successful even in work who's maybe has more experience than you and just doing whatever you want, right? Without asking for help. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I would say so. So being not wise in that situation would be creating your own experiences to learn from, as opposed to using the knowledge and wisdom that's already been built up. If that makes sense. Something I
A house, maybe ask someone who's already bought a house how to do it rather than just
exactly. So,
go for it.
which is why you can have a new realtor or something that can be good. Go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
No, I forget. Just,
So you can have a new realtor that's good for sure. But if you want someone who just deeply understands and can really coach you through the process and has seen, good markets, bad markets, and everything in between, someone who's been in the game for a little bit is going to be able to serve you well because they have that experience, the wisdom within that specific thing.
so what I'm getting at is if you are literally not relying, but asking those who have gone before you, like those who are wise in a situation. Let's just say you talk to a realtor who's already been a realtor for so long. In that situation, they can give you obviously tips and tricks on how to get to the next step,
Yeah.
right? A little faster, as opposed to if you're building it by yourself. It's going to take a lot longer to get to that same level, if that makes sense. So if you are finding wisdom to help better yourself, you're going to get to your end result maybe a little faster.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I do think that's the case, right? The experience I'm talking about, that is literally testing the waters and failing a lot.
Yeah.
So you can use somebody else's failure or you can use your own.
Like Thomas Edison, he tried and tried and tried and tried and finally got electricity. We could go back to the beginning and keep trying all the things he did, but he already gave us the electricity, so let's just keep bettering the lights at this point.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. There's no need to reinvent the wheel unless there's some type of deficiency within the system that you think can be improved upon, right?
Healthcare.
Hey, she's the nurse practitioner here, but I agree with that. So what role do you think wisdom has in kind of the day to day kind of same question you asked me, I guess. What wisdom or lack of wisdom is stuff that you see as a nurse practitioner?
As a nurse practitioner or just like in
Oh,
general?
in general too, but I would imagine there would probably be some from your work as well.
I mean, I just think in general, just I feel like take this too as being a parent or a mom. Like, I feel like most people can relate to that in a way. It's just obviously that is a huge role and responsibility you have in your life. And obviously, you want your kids to succeed. And I think obviously, if you have good parents in your life, it's always beneficial to reach out to them and just ask for wisdom on what they maybe did, or maybe they did something that maybe they learned that wasn't the greatest. Like they can at least tell you like, hey, I did this, maybe don't do that. Like I would recommend doing something else. But I do say that also saying, knowing, thankfully I've had good parents, but that there are people who don't have that sort of parent relationship or just didn't have the ability even like if they lost their parent. But I think like finding those people in your life, even if it's not a biological family member or maybe like just a close friend or maybe just someone, yeah, you've met that like has already succeeded in that role. I think it's finding someone that you can ask questions and learn and adapt so that you're giving things to your children that puts them even like that much higher than you.
Yeah. And I would even go as far as to say you can still gain wisdom through bad parents. And this is what I mean by that. Almost every kid that gets abused is by a parent that was abused. But 95, 98% of people never abuse their kids, even when they were abused, right? So by recognizing what your parents did wrong, right, you can use wisdom, right, that your experience as a kid to make sure that your kid never has to go through the same thing. That's I would say is wisdom as well.
What were we talking about the other day? That obviously like anyone can get held back or like by giving excuses of like their parents. What were we talking about with that?
Oh yeah, so the dichotomy or the differentiating fault and responsibility.
Which in itself is wisdom. So yeah, what
Yeah,
does that look like?
but just because it's not your fault that something happened to you does not mean it is not your responsibility to fix. Just because your parents were, not good, not there, whatever the case, does not mean that that's okay for you to do to your kid because that's the circumstances you have. No. So even though it was whoever's fault that happened to you, that does not mean it's not your responsibility to be better, moving forward. And I think that applies all across life, not just parenthood. A lot of people think that when they have all these excuses that, oh, I can have these excuses and then everyone will just,
Everyone wants the easy way out.
yeah,
You
exactly.
don't want to hold yourself up to a higher standard. It's just so much easier to, oh, I don't have the money. Like I can't be as successful as you because I did not have parents that had money. I don't have time. Like who has time to do X amount
Hmm.
of things? Just yeah, like we're just so easy to use like an easy cop out. I feel like with anything in life.
Yeah.
And I think you have to, we've talked about this all the time. You have to get to the point of like, it's not if you have enough time, enough energy, enough money, like it's what is truly a priority in life?
Exactly.
Because whatever is the priority, it's going to drive you to get to whatever it is you need to do to get to that point.
Yeah. And I think you're exactly right. I like to challenge people to replace the phrase, oh, I don't have time to do, with, oh, it's not a priority, because that is accurate, right? We're all given 24 hours a day. Yes, some of us are busier than others. We're parents. We both have full-time jobs. We have a lot of things going on. But we always try to make sure, and we're not perfect at this, we try to make sure that our time is being prioritized to the point where we're living the life and pointing ourselves in the direction we want to go.
Because I mean, you could look at us now. I mean, on the outside, people are probably like, wow, they have so much going for them. Just in general, if you were to look at, if you know us, but like, there's a lot of stuff we're doing behind the scenes. There's a lot of things we've had to work through. There's a lot of things. And like, we could use excuse after excuse for us not getting to a certain point. But just at the end of the day, like, forget excuses. Like, we have these goals and these dreams, and we're not going to stop till we get to them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I would agree with that. Hmm.
but back to wisdom. We got so off topic.
Yeah, I think I like that. I like the natural discourse of how conversation goes.
it all just comes back to like just making wise decisions, I think, and like you can find it in any area of life. And I think we got on the tangent, of like parents just being good people in general.
Moving forward, um, what are those sources of wisdom? And I think books is a good one. I like reading from all sorts of, right. Earlier you said something about you see people who have, some things that attributes that you would want to have in your life. And then I would say the same applies to books. When someone is living a good life or they understand something, then I want to read their books and understand what they do, kind of get their framework.
So yeah, moving forward, I think it would be like our goal, I believe, is to just try to find some of those people maybe in our life who can impart on us some wisdom in in specific areas, like on here just to like talk through things.
Yeah.
Um, and then obviously let's pull like some books, let's pull some like essays, let's pull people in history. Let's just unpack this together because I just want to keep growing and learning. And I think doing that through this, like you guys also can help hold us accountable in pursuing wisdom. And I think there is kind of like what you already said, touched on. The more you know, you are held to a higher standard. So through this, I think we're also just going to hold ourselves and you all, if you're listening, to just a higher standard of being a human. So yeah, so just through this, I just hope that we one can learn a lot together, and two, learn to make better decisions, maybe like because no one's perfect. Three, just help us each individually to just be better people, and let's change the society. Let's change just our smallest circle, like our family unit. Like there's so much we can do to like better the next generation. Let's just make some change, like in our community, our city, the world. Like, let's not stop.
Yeah, I like that. So one of the big things in the military was be, know, do. And I think that order is off, right? Because it's talking about you got to be the right person, and then if you're the right person, then you know the right stuff, and then if you know the right stuff, then you can do the right thing. But I think you can take. I think it would be know, do, be, right? So the information and knowledge and wisdom that you surround yourself with and choose to pursue changes what you do on a daily basis, right? And if it doesn't change, then you don't get to the last step of be, because you are what you do. And one of the things that is constantly,
There's a fly flying around if you don't see that.
it was like in my face, just taunting me,
Summer months, anyway.
right? So be, no, do versus no, do, be. You are what you do. And also understanding, yes, there is some external influences. We get that. But how you use those influences and what you do with them creates who you are. You are, right now, as you're watching this or listening to this, the culmination of every decision you've ever made. Uh, Here's a good book recommendation. I just read Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, and it's a story about someone who commits a murder, and it's horrible. And for a while, he gets away with it, but even the things you get away with, you never get away with ever, right? Even if nobody ever finds out about it, it still impacts your psyche or impacts some area of your life. And I think that's good because that holds us to a higher standard as well. So you are the culmination of what you do. whether someone's looking or not, whether you get caught or not. So, and I think that's a really important framework to put on, because devil's in the details and idle hands or devil's playground kind of deal. What you do when nobody's watching makes who you are. How you do one thing is how you do all things. So I think that's a massively important part. So I think by doing, this conversation, this podcast, I hope to allow people, and we're not a source, we're not the source of wisdom at all, but we hope to ignite something under people to go seek out wisdom for themselves, right? So that's why a lot of good books and different sources that we found. So, yeah.
Because, like you mentioned, change starts with what you know, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think just through this, like, how are we going to change those around us? It's changing what we know first
Changing what we know first.
before we can change the
No,
situations.
I would say knowing yourself first,
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
which I think those two things aren't necessarily in that kind of order. It's more you have to have a certain level of knowledge to
right.
know yourself, but you also have to know yourself to get that certain level of knowledge. So
I just say, like, through this, like, yeah, we're going to provide some, like, kind of more objective pieces that will, or some other person's individual, like, experiences, and provide our own thoughts on it all. But we also challenge you all to, like, what does this look like in your life, and how can you maybe think about something differently?
absolutely. And on top of that, we would love some feedback just on, hey, why don't you guys talk about this topic or that topic? Um, and I am unbelievably open, and so I'll talk about just about anything. We've actually, Savannah's gotten some side eyes from and other stuff from friends just because she's a medical professional. So we'll talk about medical stuff like it's no big deal. And some of the people were like, that's really personal. But yeah, we're just open and honest about stuff. And um, yeah, I think that it'd be really cool to build a kind of a community around this and see what's up.
Even
So
though, like, we're still, like, in most people's eyes, like, we're in the youngins, 'cause you just turned 30 this year, and
yeah,
I'm a year behind you. I just still want, like, I feel like there's just so much good we can learn all together. So
yeah,
we want you to hold us accountable and give us some ideas on what, like, you're looking for.
absolutely,
'Cause we want to learn with you.
absolutely, 100%.
But also just to give a little shout out to through Pitch and Toss. Do you want to talk about our shirts?
Yeah,
Through Pitch and Toss, actually, our lovely designer here, we're kind of working together on this, but we're just hoping to, one, be able to not only talk about wisdom through, like, this podcast, but
and
also, like, just some other ways to, like, start conversations with
yeah.
other
How do you
people.
bring wisdom into the world? And we thought that maybe products that
Yeah,
had like
like,
wisdom.
where it's a good conversation starter.
Yeah,
Like, if you have
exactly.
something on, people might be like, what does that mean? So we just kind of been trying to dabble and starting the process of just having some pieces that maybe will make others think outside of the box and start that
Absolutely.
conversation for you. So this is our Man in the Arena tee. Obviously, this is the front, and then if you're on the video, you can see the back.
On the back we have
Can you see it?
yes, ish.
It's literally the quote
Yeah,
from the speech.
from Citizens of a Republic by Teddy Roosevelt, also known as the Man in the Arena speech.
Yeah.
And then this one is just the front, so you don't get to look at my butt. And this is Make Peace with Your Malevolence tea, which I think knowing and making peace with the darker sides of yourself is an important part of knowing yourself, not acting on them. Don't be out there doing dark stuff or anything, but I think it's important to recognize the malevolent, dark, angry side of you, because I think there is.
I think we're going off of that. The people who are obviously hurting other people, they don't realize that in themselves. These are usually people who are narcissistic and they don't see, oh, it's not me, it's you.
Exactly.
So
So
understanding that you are that person.
exactly, and understanding that you have that capacity. So
We all do.
exactly, and by understanding you have that capacity, that's one less barrier to seeing how you're hurting other people, and two, tapping into that for uh, if you're a guy, one of the things we're called to be is protectors, right? And you don't protect people by, you know, not knowing what you're doing and not being competent. Um, so I think that having a skill set that allows for defense or whatever that looks like is an important aspect of being the protector, whatever that is in your family, right? However your family is blended, someone's job is to protect, and they're by not being competent in, I guess, violence, they're putting the rest of their family at risk.
Mm.
I hate violence for no reason, but I think that it is an important thing to know. So
And just like look at Mama Bear in general.
exactly.
She has to have that aggressive piece to protect her babies even from the own male grizzly. So
Absolutely.
but yeah, so you can also follow us on social media
Yep.
platforms like
So on X, we are Pitch X Toss, no spaces. On,
we're on Instagram.
there you go, and TikTok as Pitch period and period Toss. And then
We're still to put together a Facebook page, so maybe by the time this is out, there should be one out there too.
and it'll be tied to our Instagram anyway, so it'll be
Right.
easy to find.
Right.
And then Pinterest, Pitch X Toss as well. But
Website.
our website is the big one, which is pitch dash and spelled out dash toss.com. So it's pitch dash and dash toss.com. So and the rest of our stuff's going to be on there, and then there'll be updates and everything through the other socials. So head on over to the website, check it out. I have some.
Give us some ideas.
I need all the ideas, man. I'm the idea guy, and I still don't have all the ideas. But all right. But thank you for joining us on Pitch and Toss. Remember, like Pitch and Toss, life is a game of risks and rewards. So learn, grow, and shape your future. Stay tuned for more.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.